Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 58 of the Two Russells podcast. Last week, there was only one Russell and Felix Bravo on the podcast, Russell. And I've only just got the edit, so I haven't heard the nice things you would have said about me. So,
I missed you so much. What I didn't miss, though, and can I just issue a caution to viewers of a sensitive disposition? Russell Jervis has his legs out. Because he's been at the World Cup in the US, he now thinks, what do you think you are, Gary Lineker or something?
I think I'm all American.
American. No, Felix Bravo. So I found it an absolutely fascinating conversation. Bearing in mind the guy's only 29 years old. He's running EXP International. I think 6,000 agents, 22 countries, an incredible success. But his story, as we really, really like on this podcast, was fascinating. You know, from his father effectively being arrested and standing trial in Venezuela, him and his sister and his mother having to kind of rush to the US, kind of being chased out by the Venezuelan army, and the hardship then that ensued that probably makes Felix Bravo the man that he is now.
Fantastic. Well, it's out tomorrow. We're recording this on the 26th. It's out on the 27th. So I can't wait to listen to it on my way back today because I've travelled on the public transport of the trains, which are very hot, Russell, which is why I'm in a pair of shorts.
Well, it's unlike you, isn't it, to be on public transport? I'm on public transport all the time because I'm a man of the people. You normally have a Rainer Mercedes limo, don't you?
I wish. And you've been quite busy, haven't you, with your other world of politics. So what's the take on Andy Burnham and your mate Keir Starmer leaving? What's the view?
When Keir Starmer resigned, I did a YouTube show on a channel called UK Live, which I kind of do here and there, which is part of the whole kind of Mike Graham empire. And it was great because Keir Starmer resigned 10 minutes before I went on air.
Right.
So on the way into the studio, I bought party balloes. And let's just say it was a joyous show for me. So big smiles, big Cheshire cat grins. Look,
I was listening to Julie Hartley-Brewer encouraging people to drink champagne at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Never heard of her. So look, I think
that name all the time.
To be very quickly political, just for a second. Look, I think it's now our 6th Prime Minister in 10 years, or Andy Burnham will be. I don't think he'll be the sea change that perhaps some would hope. I despair for the country, frankly, and that's why I got back into politics. To talk about that just for a second, because any of us that have got kids really should be a little bit worried about the direction I think that the country's going in. So that's why I'm back into it. But I won't give you the political sermon. Follow me on X if you want to do politics, but that's not for here.
Okay, I might do that. And
you might do that?
I might follow you on X. I'm not on X. I'm not on X. There's something wrong with me. I'll get onto X. But the property market will still be fascinated by what's happening in the change of government, whether it's going to give any lift, any help. And our next guest will be very interested in that as well.
Can I reveal something? That by the time this goes out, so we think this will go out on, what will this be, the 3rd of July?
Yeah, 3rd of July. Yeah.
You will have heard, because this is what I'm hearing from Westminster, that Andy Burnham might scrap stamp duty.
Really?
Yes. I'm writing a piece as we speak to go out today for Property Industry Eye. I have it on good authority that he's going to combine council tax and stamp duty into a national kind of annual levy of 0.48%, by the way. So you heard it here first on the Two Russells. Terrible for those that then have to pay that levy, particularly at the high end. So in other words, if you've got £1 million house in Colchester like Russ has, or 2 million actually, then you'll pay
2 million houses.
You'll pay £5,000, £10,000, whatever that ends up being as a percentage. But actually, for the property market, in terms of getting away from that transactional tax thing, it's got to be a good thing, right?
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah, I think so, because the agents I'm talking to, they had a very good first 4 or 5 months of the year, and June, I'm hearing it's a little bit creaky.
It's quite down, yeah.
Well, the heat
Talking
doesn't
of creaky,
help.
shall we introduce our guest?
Of course. Welcome. It says on LinkedIn, as a communication and motivational speaker, I help sales leaders and sales professionals sell more often with ease. I make live sales calls on stage. You're famous, Tony, for making these live sales calls. Maybe we'll get to do one on the podcast. But please, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Tony Morris of Tony Morris International Estate or Agency Titans. Tony, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, guys. Really looking forward to it.
What's Agency Titans?
It is a coaching mastermind for estate agency owners, helping them grow, scale, whatever their goals might be, to exit, acquire, whatever it might be.
So it's not so much estate agency as in how to value, how to get the listing, how to market. It's more about the business side of agency, and specifically with regard to an exit.
It's both actually. No, not really. It depends what goals are. We work on the strategy, process, systems with owners, but then we double down with the staff. We work on sort of skills training, be it exactly what you said, how to qualify better, charge double fees to your competition, all those key elements. So we do like a 4-day boot camp, owners only. So we really focus hard on getting yourself out the business and working on it, which is always a challenge, as we know, for business owners. And then if they join our mastermind program, then we work with some of the staff as well as them.
Does it work?
I mean, the results have been insane. One example, we had a client, Kendall's, who up north got about 8 or 9 offices in Wakefield, and in a year they've increased fees will generate 348 grand in bigger fees in 1 year.
Wow,
So,
which is totally bottom line, right?
It's unbelievable. So Sally runs agency. I don't know if you know Sally Lawson, Agent Rainmaker, but in 8 years she's generated 91 million additional revenue across all the letting agents.
Wow,
which is quite a
So
quite
across
something.
What are there now? 18,000 estate and letting agency branches in the UK, Russ, something like that. Why isn't everybody jumping on this?
I think a couple of reasons. One, they don't know about it. I think that's one big thing.
Yeah.
They do now. And I think also some of them believe they're doing well, and do they need training? Do they need coaching? My thoughts of that is, if Djokovic still has a coach, what excuse does anyone have, right? That's my thoughts on it.
But there is a cynicism, though, isn't there, in estate agency, that a lot of agents, particularly the old school, think, no, I've been in the business, I've worked for Best Louise for 25 years. You can't teach me anything. I would suggest the opposite is true.
Yes. Well, they're stuck in their ways, right? And ultimately, if you're saying, I don't want to develop, what you're actually saying is, I don't want to grow. I don't want to become more profitable. And that's the biggest block, is that mindset. So the people we focus on are ones with growth mindsets. They're receptive, they're open, and ultimately agencies change dramatically, as we know, in the last 5 years. And it's about how do they start to change the traditional marketing to the new way.
I was asked this week about training and why, when people are looking at P&Ls and times getting tough, one of the first things that companies cut are training
and marketing. Training and marketing, the two things you definitely shouldn't cut.
Yeah, definitely shouldn't, because that's what's going to help you get through it. But throughout your CV and LinkedIn profile, it talks about communication, because you didn't set out and start as an estate agent, did you?
Never been an agent, ever.
No. So talk to us about your early career and where it all began for you.
So sales began in a call centre in Watford called Sitel, one of the biggest outsourced call centres, and I was selling gas and electric. It was the most sexiest job ever. But I was doing like 300 calls a day. So it taught me, I mean, it was horrendous, but it taught me discipline and rejection, and how to deal with that. But I was okay at it. So I used to then coach the people around me of like, what's Tony doing that others aren't? Then I moved into software after a year.
Like Jordan Belfort and selling
it was a bit
pennies.
like that. It was about that, like that, right? Then I sold address management software to sort of tier 1 banks, did that for 6 years and, built a nice career for myself. But there was sort of a glass ceiling, and I thought, what do I want more, I'm ambitious. So I set my training business up and speaking company in May 2006. So 20 years now.
So is it all psychology?
There's a lot to when you say psychology, it's definitely about mindsets, but it's also about definitely the questions we ask, our listening skills, the terminology we're using, but ultimately it's about how do we get more out of people and how do we get them to comply.
What was it in you that made you think, right, I want to go and do this for myself? I've hit this glass ceiling. So it's easy now to look back and go, so I just went and opened on my own. But it can't, as a trainer, as a coach, it can't have been as straightforward as that.
I think looking back at the sort of 7 years prior, the thing I loved the most is actually helping people achieve results that they didn't think possible. That gave me a massive buzz. I didn't earn from that, but I thought if I can help others do what I do and see their eyes light up, that really appealed to me. So I thought, look, I've done okay, and can I teach people to replicate some of the techniques that I use? And honestly, the feedback's been amazing. It's what I absolutely love.
Can we put you on the spot then?
Yeah,
and
please.
You give us an idea of what one of those techniques might be. So let's say I'm running an agency in a high street where there's 15 other agents. I'm barely getting 0.75%. I'm number 6 or 7 in the pecking order. What would be the first couple of things that you would do within my business to help me do better, particularly with regard to average fees?
So a couple of things come to mind. One, the fees typically is in the valuer's head rather than the vendor's head. We know from research, typically they say 91% of vendors choose an agent on anything other than fees. But I think valuers are very fixated on our competition is doing so cheap, we have to match it or be similar to win. So the first thing is a mind shift of actually it's not about fees, it's about how do we articulate value and why are we better than the 15 other competitors in the high street. But when you're in a negotiation with a vendor, the fact that if they're bringing up your fees are too high, what they're saying is, I want to use you, but you haven't justified why you're worth more. So a nice technique actually is to take fee out of the variable. So you'd say, well, look, if our fees were the same as all the other agents you've spoken to, who would you be choosing? 99% they'll say you, right? And when they say you, say, I'm really pleased, and why would you choose us? You zip up, and all the things the vendor then says is they're selling your agency back to you. And they can't argue with themselves. That's called mental. So ultimately, they're like, I get it. And that's quite a nice technique to justify.
That's a clever technique. So you're using the benefits they've already got in their minds to help them justify to themselves why you should be a higher fee on the basis that, hey, those things are worth something.
Correct. And I always say it's not, you don't charge that fee, you command that fee. There's a reason we command that fee because we're world class. And ultimately, if we want to be better than, I call them Crap and Co., we are going to be a lot more, but that's what you pay for. And as long as I can articulate why and what you're going to get.
They've also called you in probably, haven't they?
Correct.
So, I mean, I know.
There's an appetite.
It could be door knocking, it could be any reason, but someone has rung you, can I have a valuation, please, from you. They've already chosen you. It's down to you to...
Here's a question, right? How much money do you think estate agents in the UK are leaving on the table?
Oh my God.
I mean, out of let's say it's 1 million transactions as in sales a year, but we're probably listing 2 million homes a year in order to get to that. But of the 1 million transactions, let's say average sale price 280k roughly, 1%, so 2,800 quid times whatever that million is. I mean, it's a big number. If agents could get 0.25% more, that would be, what would that be? Another 400 or 500 quid a transaction times
Game
a million.
change.
So that is that's 500
trillion,
no,
lots of money.
5 million quid.
Half a million.
It's a huge number.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a huge, and that's got to be true, isn't it? So if it's not as easy as, but if it is about mindset and understanding the technique and putting yourself in the kind of vendor's head and so on, it's really irritating and frustrating, isn't it? That we moan as an estate agency industry that it's really tough. I wish I could get higher fees. But I suspect that you could go into every estate agency in Britain and within half an hour, you'd have them getting another 0.25%.
No, genuinely, no question. We've seen an ROI within typically 1 week when they actually think differently. I mean, I work with a company, Manning Staton, you might remember.
Just sold them.
We had
right.
Russell on the podcast. Yeah.
He's brilliant, right?
MBE now, just got an MBE.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yes.
MBE just for being on this podcast.
So So Mark said to me, we're doing valuation training. This is years ago, right? Before he acquired the other client, Ryder and Dutton, who were a client. And he said, there's a lady there, I won't name her, saying she doesn't want to come to your valuation training. What would you do in my shoes? And I'd say, well, I'd fire her. And he said, why? I said, well, you're investing in her. If her attitude is, I don't want to get better, I think I'm good enough, to me, she shouldn't be on the bus. And he actually agreed. So we brought her in. And for the first morning, she despised me. It was the typical, who is this bleep? Yeah.
But was she getting like 0.6% or something?
No, I think her average was about 1.1, which actually was all right. But
not the best of the bunch.
Not the best.
Nationally.
No. Correct. And then the afternoon, she sort of started to have some light bulb moments. And what was the best thing for me, and it goes back to what I said, Russell, to you of why did I move into training? 2 days later, I got a text from her to say, I want to thank you. I just got 1.75% fee.
Tiny little apology?
Not really.
No, you're not going to get that.
But
you're not going to get that.
0.65 more was like, wow, But you said, in that example, £500,000 left on the table. But what about FS, conveyancing, other insurance
half a
products?
billion, I meant to say. I think it's half a billion.
But look at all the other opportunities, right? Squeeze the juice. Yeah. I mean, one example, and what we've got to think about is so many agents are like, I'm so pressured to get mortgage appointments. The problem is they're thinking about themselves. If I think, well, my clients need typically 66% need a mortgage, why are they not getting it from us, right?
They all need a conveyancer.
And everyone, buyer and seller, need conveyancing. But why are we not offering it? And I think we're worried, I call it commission breath.
Yeah.
We're worried that we're going to put them off. But actually we're serving and adding value.
Yeah, you're helping. You're
Correct.
helping the seller or the buyer find their way.
Correct.
But talking of service and adding value, I think when we spoke, you were about to speak at a conference for the Property Franchise Group, and
that's right.
You're on stage, you're doing your talk. How many people individually approach you? Because in the US and Australia, the agents are very big on personal coaching, personal development. In the UK, it very much seems to me that it's about my company is going to invest in me rather than a person thinking, if you want to get better at paddle, you might get a coach. Your daughter has coaches. You mentioned geography, has a coach. But in the UK, agents very much feel that they need it to come from the company. Do you get many individuals approach you? Or?
I reckon in 20 years, probably 20 individuals have approached me, said, will you mentor me? Will you coach me? 20. And I've worked probably with 10, 15,000 salespeople. Right. So that tells you everything. And I think...
Why do you think that is?
I think part of the problem is they see it as a weakness. They think if I need help, clearly something's wrong. Where I think in America, it's the exact opposite mindset.
So we see it as a pride thing.
Correct. I believe it is.
Whereas in the US, they see it as...
I'm going to get better.
Embellishment.
Correct. I want to invest in myself. I mean, my thought is, and I learned this years ago from a coach, is if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Yeah.
And why are we not surrounding ourselves and striving to get better every day? That 1% difference.
Do you think there's a failure then amongst the estate agency industry, mainly particularly amongst corporates, of not pushing a culture of training? Because... I mean, in fairness, I haven't been an estate agent for some years. I've never worked for a corporate. But I just get the feeling that training is it's either just a box-ticking exercise or it's something that just doesn't really happen.
Or is this cautious fad?
Well, I think some people see training not just as something that denotes that they failed, but I think sometimes people see in this country training as a punishment.
Yes.
It's, I've got to go do training because we're not good enough. You go, no. The attitude should be, I'm quite good, but I want to get to the next level, which is 2% or which is closing 60% of my valuations. I mean, is that an estate agency cultural thing or is it a British thing?
I think more agency, because if I think about the 50 industries I've served, some of those have a completely different outlook. But if I was working for an estate agent and they're actually investing in me, because that's what they're doing, what an amazing organisation to work for. So I think, again, it's got to be a mindset shift massively. But I think it's also about the culture we build. So we know with agents, right, they earn on completion. So we get all these inquiries, whether they're good or bad, but we spend maybe 20 grand a month on marketing and PR, generating all these quality leads, but we don't train the people taking the leads. And those people are called the CEO of the first impression. And if they don't know what a conveyancer is, what chance have they got of doing a great phone call?
I think it's a whole separate subject in terms of what estate agents do with their leads. Because my experience is if they don't really see, for instance, a viewing as a lead that could be a potential seller and therefore a potential mortgage and so on, they kind of dismiss it. If it doesn't turn into something within 24 hours, it just gets forgotten about and buried. So I guess so we talked about how you got into this. I mean, what was your background before Tony Morris International and Agency Titans?
Well, as I said, I went through
telesales marketing, telesales
Correct.
training.
So I graduated at uni, spent a year travelling, which was phenomenal.
Where'd you go?
And all over, 15, 16 countries, Australia, Asia,
Amazing.
LA. It was amazing. I did half a season in Whistler, snowboarding, which was amazing, with my best mate. But I got home, my dad was like, get a job. Immediately. In fact, I sold encyclopaedias in Sydney just to be able to extend my stay. So I ran out of money and I earned enough for over 8 weeks to spend some time in Whistler. So it was good fun. Right. So that was sort of my start, I guess, of sales.
Yeah.
And I got back and my dad was like, get a job. A lot of my mates were at the call centre, so that made it easy. But I fell in love with the chase, with I looked at it as a game. And I really liked it. The harder they were, the more I enjoyed it.
So you liked the deal, the close?
Yes, I really did. And I think it was the psychology, the persuasion of getting people to think differently. That's what really excited me. So then I moved into software where obviously the earnings were much better. It was B2B and I was negotiating some massive contracts and loved that. And that goes back to your question of, I want to teach people what I do to get different outcomes. And so I love selling still, obviously. You know, Titans is about helping my agency clients buy from us and seeing the value in what we do. But for me, the results is everything.
Was there a moment that you met somebody in a estate agency, or how did you
Yes.
transition? So how did the
That's a really good
transition come
question.
across into the property sector?
Well, our first phone call, our first inquiry was an estate agent called Green & Co. I don't know if you remember
Yeah,
David
Wills-
Pollock.
They were on the telly.
Wilson
They were on the
Green, weren't
telly.
They did a Channel 4 thing.
And they had
That's right.
James Corden came into their office once, didn't
Oh,
they?
did he?
Oh, really?
But that
Yeah,
was
I
a
remember coming
really
in, yeah.
good kind of. It was one of the first reality TV.
Yeah,
things.
that's
I mean,
right.
going back, I don't know, 15-ish years. I don't know.
This was 20 years.
20
2000
years.
Yeah, we got an
There you go.
inquiry, and they had a life coach, David Pollock, you know, self-made multimillionaire from property, and they had a life coach every year. They took all of their staff to some mansion somewhere and focused on them. So he had the right mindset, but he was like, we're not developing their sales ability. So they brought me and at the time my business partner. We spent 3 days with them, and 2 weeks later the results were insane. I thought, we're on something here. And then gradually I won more agents, and I realised that was a niche that was making such an impact, and I loved it. I found it exciting. And that's really, so my catalyst, I think, was about 2010. I realised...
First inquiry.
Yeah, well, first inquiry in 2006, and that's really what started off.
Yeah.
You know?
mentioned a business partner then. So a lot of people we've had on the podcast have huge successes now,
Yeah.
but those successes have come from monumental
Adversity.
failures, whatever it may be. So
Yeah.
has everything gone in a straight line for you, Tony?
The
So-
exact opposite. So we had to dissolve 2 companies, and it was hard actually. So we set up, my father-in-law and I, Boyd, 2006. We started building a really nice business. You know, 300 grand in our first year from me cold calling, which was a nice from a starting point.
Yeah.
And then we had a client actually based here in South Key. I won't mention them, but it was a property investment firm. And unfortunately, they screwed us for 65 grand. We had to turn the company up. So that was a real painful moment for us.
Right.
So we managed to sort of recoup and sell up again. But then my next big lesson was Wren Kitchens. We did some work with them, won a massive contract, but they wouldn't sign the contract. They said, if you want to work with us, you do it.
It's a
but
handshake.
It's a handshake.
That's a massive red flag. Isn't
Massive red flag. But I thought, you know what? We were dealing with Malcolm Healy, the Yorkshire billionaire, and I thought, what an opportunity. And I believe we're as good as we say we are, so they're not going to get rid of us. So we did a year and a half, and then they got a team into video, my training. And I remember thinking, this is a big red
So
flag.
they could copy it.
2 days later, they called us into the office, said, you guys have been amazing, but thank you. You know, we've got what we needed.
Were they paying you?
Yeah.
Are paying me incredible amounts, but when they recorded us, they then said, I said, well, look, you know, thank you, but we got 6 months of bookings with me, Boyd, and 4 other trainers. And I said, what do you want to do with those 6 months? They said, you can do them, but at half the price.
Right.
And that obviously didn't work, so we had to walk away. But it was a good lesson. That was 80% of our business, you know, the 80-20 rule.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that hurt, eggs in one basket. So that was a great lesson that I learned, that now I make sure I spread my clients. So, you know, God forbid, well, when that happens, because it does happen, right?
And how's your mix of in-office training, speaking at conferences? Because
Yeah.
as I follow you on your journey, you're often on stage talking,
Yeah.
you know, getting yourself psyched up
Yeah.
and ready to walk through that sort of
Well, I love
stage
it.
curtain. So
For me, that's my absolute buzz. You know, I really love it. I get excited. I make live calls on stage, and for me, that's the most exciting part of what I do.
Do you want to do one now?
Yeah, why not? Let's phone it. Let's do it. Get a lead. Let's go.
No, we haven't
Yeah.
got
we haven't got any leads.
Well, that's the start of the problem.
Yeah.
You need a PR agency, maybe.
yeah.
Yes, good shout. Actually, good shout, Tony.
So my business is threefold, really: speaking, training, and e-learning. So Titans, it's all about training in person, online, and we also have a lot of online content. But then my other business is speaking is probably 35% of what I do. Training maybe 50%, and the rest is my e-learning, my 29.
Is speaking, though, your PR to try and attract people
Yeah.
to you as a person and therefore as a business?
It's a great question. So a model that I've learned is, I call it the 3 Fs: fit, fee, flee. So when I get an inquiry, so this afternoon I'm doing a gig in front of 120 recruitment owners,
Okay.
right? That's a great fit for me. So when the fit's right,
I should be going along.
Yeah, absolutely. So when the fit's right, I'm sometimes a bit more flexible if I need to be on my fee. If the fit's not right, it's all about the fee. And if I don't get those two, I flee.
Right.
So the dream client is one where I get a great fee that I am this afternoon and a great fit. You know, and that's how I tend to choose my clients, really. But you're right, ultimately it's paid marketing, but I'm not paying for it. You know, it's a revenue stream that then turns into typically a lot more business.
I don't know if you've watched any of our illustrious podcasts.
I have.
The success that is the two Russells. You know, what we like to do is to kind of dig a bit deeper into the person, and I guess to try and give some inspiration to people that are watching, particularly if there has been, to the point just now, you know, a bit of challenge, a bit of adversity.
Yeah.
Can we go back to kind of, you know, childhood, kind of where you grew up, school, parents, you know, how was your upbringing? Conventional? Happy?
A mixture. It was a good upbringing. Lovely parents, both worked. You know, my sister,
Together?
You know, together. Yeah. So that was a really nice upbringing in Bournemouth, in Hertfordshire. I got into school in a private school when I was about, I think I was about 13. But I got bullied for a period because I'm Jewish. And there was some, unfortunately, quite a few anti-Semitic people there. So I had good friends, but there weren't many Jewish people at the school. So that was quite hard. It was my first experience of anti-Semitism. And as you know, it's getting, at the moment, it's horrendous, right? It's really unleashed again, as it were. So that was quite tough.
Or did the school do anything about it back then?
No, not really. I spoke to
turned a blind eye.
teachers, turned a blind eye.
So they didn't see it as anti-Semitic, they just saw it as kids being kids.
Kids being kids, exactly that, right? But it was upsetting, right, to hear the things they said, and I couldn't really defend myself. I'm a 13-year-old kid, and there were a few people
one
making
of
comments.
10 challenging
And
you.
in a new school.
In
Where
a new
presumably
school.
you're on your own, right?
I didn't know anyone, so it was hard. And I knew a couple of my mates, Jewish friends, were there, but that's it. So it was quite hard. But my first, I would guess, trauma, I was 13 and I was walking my dog, Rocky, Yorkshire Terrier.
Right.
And he's like my best mate, right, as we do. And there was an Alsatian that lived about 6 houses away in Bournemouth from where we lived. And I remember every time I walked Rocky, this Alsatian was outside, like behind a fence, but ferocious, barking, but luckily behind a fence. But I remember vividly, I was walking back with my friend Craig at the time, and I walked past this house, and the Alsatian wasn't barking. And I remember thinking, bizarre, I turned round, and he'd escaped, and he was running at me. And I, what do you do? So I threw Rocky up on the lead in the air. I panicked. The Alsatian jumped up and grabbed him. And he literally chewed him up in front of me, right? And I'm 12 years old.
Oh, Jesus.
My mate Craig went and got my mum. And I'm sitting there watching my dog, be eaten, right? And 12 years old, that's a bit like, wasn't easy. I hit the dog. He bit my arm. And he survived. Rocky had 97 stitches and survived for another sort of 5 years. And the reason I share that is I saw an Alsatian a few months ago. I was out with my daughter Poppy, and I burst out crying. And I was
recently?
Recently, or 6 months ago, and I'm thinking this was 30.
This is like, so, I mean, I don't want to reveal necessarily how old you are, but
it was 36
years ago.
Yeah.
But what I've learned, because I've suffered other trauma, which I'll talk about with my dad, it's trauma gets stuck. It gets stuck in the back of your brain, and things just trigger.
You put it in a box, don't you?
Well, maybe
Exactly
because you
that.
hide it.
Yeah, I
because
think so.
You don't want to kind of walk it through to
It's too painful.
get over it.
It's too painful.
Do you talk about other trauma? So such as
Yeah,
what?
so I'm always been very sensitive. I'm an empath. And I remember when I was about 21, I got back from travelling and I met a girl and she cheated on me. But we didn't have children, we weren't married, but I took it so personally. And I actually made myself ill. I got a stomach ulcer as a result, 3 really bad stomach ulcers. And so now I couldn't, I'm in a bad place. I can't drink. So, 21, all you want to do is go out, get pissed. That's gone. So I got myself in quite a dark place. And I remember my late dad saying to me, Tony, you're very black and white. There is some grey, but I can never see the grey. And I realised later on, I got diagnosed with bipolar 2 years ago, and I realised I think I've had it since I was 21. I didn't realise. Wow. But I set my company up May 2006. My dad died in July, 3 months later. He was just turned 55.
Wow,
and
young.
3 months later, I got married. But it was really hard because it was hard losing a parent, right? But I was very close to my dad and my mum. I still am.
Was it hard getting married with the rawness of that having just happened?
It was painful. We almost postponed the wedding. It was really hard. It was really tough, to be honest with you, but we didn't want to, and Dad wouldn't have wanted us to. But my dad was at our engagement. He met my wife and loved her, and and he saw me set this company up. He never saw me train or speak, but hopefully he's watching.
Yeah.
But it was really hard because he got diagnosed a year earlier or 10 months earlier, but he went into remission. So I was like, happy days, he's better.
Yeah.
But he came back from holiday, the first holiday together since it happened. And it came back, but small. It came back in his hip. And I remember thinking, I guess naively, of that's all right, they'll cut that out in an op. But it wasn't so. And I remember thinking he's okay, he's not going to die from this. And my mum called him on a Thursday night, remember it vividly, the 28th of July, saying, you know, your dad's not going to be surviving this. And it was literally like a train had hit me.
Wow.
It honestly was like out of the blue. And I said, are we talking years? And she said, it probably won't be a year. And he died 3 days later.
Oh, my goodness.
So it was
3
a bit
days
like,
later?
3 days later, yeah. He went into the hospital that night. And
My God.
I remember it vividly. So that 4 days, I was trapped. It's like been on a, you know, like a broken record in my head. And I went through some trauma therapy last year. And although it was probably the most painful thing I've ever experienced, it helped. Those 4 days feels easier now.
What, you felt a weight had lifted?
Massively. And I think, you know, I felt a bit stupid.
And what happens
it was,
in that trauma therapy? It's open
it's
talking?
painful.
Or,
Yeah, you talk about, obviously, the 4 days was my block. I had to unpack. But, you know, one part Amanda did is she said, you're in the room with your dad, you know, and what would you say, what are your last words to him? And now look at your 26-year-old self as a 46-year-old. What would you say to your 26-year-old self? Yeah. But you're in the room, you can picture it.
So how emotional was that?
I was on the floor. I was a wreck. I was an absolute wreck. And I remember thinking, how's this helping? But it has.
But the therapy, I guess, is designed to get that out so that you move past it.
Correct. Yeah. But I was embarrassed, if I'm honest. This happened 20 years ago, and I thought, how am I not over it? But what I realised
was
is...
it a moment that every night you were...
Oh, the first year, I didn't remember
recently,
this.
that made you want to go to, I need to go and unpack
My
this.
wife said, you need to deal with this. She said, you just can't get past these 4 days. This isn't right.
But is that because it was manifesting itself in everyday life in
I
some
think
way?
so. I think so.
And your wife noticed, maybe?
Well, yeah. I mean, the first year I woke up in a sweat shaking, which I didn't even remember. Literally shaking. My wife had to cuddle me, and I didn't remember that. But it was so hard because I just set this company up, and I was excited. And every time I won a big deal, I'd have phoned Dad.
Yeah.
You know, my dad was a presenter. He worked for IBM, and that was like, I think he'd have liked to see me speak, right? But, you know, obviously couldn't. So it was tough, but it got, I guess, sort of easier after a few years.
But it was still there.
It was definitely still there.
Yeah.
It was definitely there. My son got diagnosed with ADHD 3 years ago, and I remember I've had counsellors ever since. Also, like a bit of a life coach, right? I believe in that. Obviously, that's the business I'm in. And Hayley, my counsellor, said, "Tony, you're so black and white. You come in and you say you've had the best week ever, but nothing's really happened, or you've had the worst week of your life."
Is that the bipolar manifesting
And that's
itself?
the bipolar. So she said, you need to see a psychiatrist.
So how do you
which
manage
I did.
bipolar?
There's sort of few strategies. I mean, I've written a talk called Speak Up about mental health in business, and Speak Up is the process, but, you know, S is to share and talk about it. But I found personally that helps.
Which is what you're doing now.
Correct. So it's a part of sharing medication. I make sure I look after myself, diet, exercise, I meditate, a lot of breathing exercises, and I take time out working on myself. All these things I do, I have to do, otherwise I get into quite a dark place.
So do you think you're in a good place now?
Yeah, I really am. I think I've never been suicidal, but I have had moments where I thought, what's the point? What's the point of all this? And I remember I'll tell you the catalyst was I was going to train Webbers in Exeter.
Okay, yeah.
And it was a Sunday, and I went to Paddington about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was a bit pissed off because I'm leaving my family again for a weekend, right? And I got to the train station, and my ticket was actually for 5 o'clock. So I was 2 hours early. And I remember saying to the lady that I got the ticket for, showing the ticket, I was like, what is the fucking point in life?
Yeah.
And she was like, sorry. And I literally wanted to like give up.
Yeah.
Over being 2 hours early, and I thought,
It's
that's
funny, those
not
the
right.
incidental things that tip you over the edge,
Do you know
don't
what I
they?
mean? And I got to Webbers, I got to Exeter on that Sunday night, and for the first 3 days I was great. I had to put on the face.
Yeah.
But I got back on a Thursday and I was buzzing, completely different outlook, and nothing had changed. And that's when I knew, okay, this needs to be looked at. So the psychiatrist then diagnosed me, gave me the right meds, and I've had to gradually increase them. But I'm in a place now where I call them episodes where I can really go up or down.
But can you manage that in terms of you flicking a switch consciously to get yourself out the dark place into a brighter place?
I focus on the people I want to be around and the things I enjoy. I really focus hard on that, and I take out all the stuff that I don't like doing where I can, not in terms of work, but outside of work. So I'm just enjoying things more.
And how important is family now in that?
To be honest, it's always been important. Like literally, I know it's a bit cheesy, but my kids are everything. My wife's everything. And
How
my
old are your
dog,
kids?
Harry's just turned 18 last couple of weeks ago, and Poppy's 15.
Lovely.
So my son's actually an apprentice for me at the moment.
Is he?
Yeah,
Right.
and that's really nice. We're spending real quality time
What, he's
together.
training? Did you do stage stuff?
He wants to be a speaker like
Brilliant.
me. Yeah, so he's training to
But
be a
also
speaker.
like your dad, there seems to be a
Yes.
trend here.
Yeah.
Correct. And I remember, Russell, actually, I was 12 and I used to watch my dad. He used to prepare in a mirror. He had these hideous mirrored wardrobes and he'd sit there practicing. But he was amazing. Like, as a speaker, he just was natural. And I thought I'd love to be like that. So hopefully I've taken bits from him and hopefully Harry will take bits from me.
And looking for that help and support is so important. But as we
Vital.
mentioned earlier about estate agents not wanting to be coached, it's really something, particularly in men, that we shun, don't we? But, we'll be all right. I'll put a face on it.
Yeah, correct.
Don't worry about me.
Yeah,
Correct.
look, I have a coach, and I think that having a coach, I mean, I don't know why it seems to be a stigma. Really.
It's definitely.
I agree.
It's not someone telling you what decisions to make.
Yeah.
My coach, Cynthia Moore, who's fabulous, and I think she's been a coach to me and my business partner for 4 years. She helps me unlock a problem.
Yes.
Which I then find a solution to myself.
Yeah.
There's no shame in it, far from it. It's a bit like talking to your best mate in the pub or your wife or whoever, where you say, yeah, I've got this real issue. And you know how a mate or your other half will say, okay, well, is it really an issue? Or what do you think? What are the 2 or 3 things you could do to kind of get over that? And what do you actually want to achieve out of that issue? It's just that.
Yeah.
Right? And actually, sometimes wives, friends, they're a bit too close. My mates, by the way, if I went to any of my mates and said, hey, I got this problem, they'd just take the piss out of me for 20 minutes. So a coach...
Because they're jealous they haven't got one.
No, but a coach is so incredibly important. But I think there's a misconception of what a coach is. And I guess you use the kind of tennis, football, paddle scenario where the world's best sports people have coaches. And you can tell, actually, like, for instance, Emma Raducanu. Like, she was without a coach and she disappeared out the world rankings for months and years. Got a coach back, all of a sudden she's good again.
So final at Queen's, wasn't she?
So coaches clearly work.
Yeah.
But it isn't that coach, whether it's tennis or business, is saying, right, what you need to do is get on the phone, tell them this, ask them that, tell them that this is the decision. It's kind of finding the solution yourself. And I'm really, particularly in estate agency, the property industry, I worry that it's such a kind of, I don't want to say backward, but it's such a traditional industry when it comes to fees, when it comes to coaching. I think, look, the sector needs to get over its bloody self, doesn't it?
Yeah, billion%. I've got a podcast called Confessions of a Serial Seller. I interviewed the best, pretty much the top 100 salespeople in the world, right? All self-made multi-millionaires. And one of the things that came out of all of the interviews is their work in progress. Because, they say you never graduate from the world of selling. It's always evolving. And if you want to stay ahead of the game, you got to invest in yourself, full stop. But it is a stigma that I think people need to get over.
I imagine a lot of business owners now are talking to you about AI and, don't worry, Tony, AI is going to do this for us. AI is going to do that. Where do you see the value of Claude and Perplexity and ChatGPT?
It's going to be such a positive impact if used correctly, because AI is going to take away all of the administration and headache that's actually wasting time that you could be selling. So ultimately, agencies survive and thrive through completions and, like we touched on, all the other additional revenue streams. But the reason a lot of valuers can't do more business is they're held back by all the tasks they really shouldn't be working on. And AI is going to replace all of those ultimately. So for me, it's like, if you don't use it properly, it's like going to a gunfight with a penknife and hoping you're going to win.
Yeah.
It's there to add value and be, you can do things that AI, that would have taken you 6 hours that you're doing in 6 seconds. Why wouldn't you capitalize on that? So if we look at our best clients at Titans, they've got AI answering the phone, AI booking viewings for them.
Really?
AI doing the follow-ups, AI following up with people downloading e-guides to book them onto an appointment, to qualify or disqualify. All of that legwork that now doesn't need to be done by the salesperson.
But they certainly haven't got AI converting people from from to listing.
Because human to human.
And that's never going to happen,
No,
right?
I
Because
agree.
if your kind of relationship with agents was based on an AI bot from agent A, agent B, agent C, agent D, whatever, you're never going to have the chemistry, the empathy that you would get. Because back to your point earlier on about how you command a higher fee, a lot of that is in the trust that comes from the connection between agent and vendor. I remember in my traditional estate agency business going back a few years, our best listers were all women, first of all. And one of the reasons, apart from them being trusted much more than us men, was because I remember my sister was one of them, and a girl called Lisa Butcher. And Lisa Butcher used to come back 90% of the time with the listing. And you say, what are you doing to get these listings? And she'd say, I don't talk about the property at all until the end. She said, I have a cup of tea, talk about kids, talk about football, talk about what was on the telly last night, build up a relationship. And at the end, I'd just say, should we crack on then?
Get this done.
And the fee was easier. Getting the right price point was easier. Why? Because she'd built a relationship and a connection.
And sometimes
AI's never going to do that.
Agreed. And sometimes the vendor won't even ask the fee. It's at the point, oh, by the way, what do you charge for this? Because you've totally got buy-in. That I don't see changing. I agree. But
do you think the corporates, though, I mean, your old firm, for instance, and the likes of, I don't know, a Countrywide or a Dexter's or whoever, do you think that there are conversations in boardrooms where they think, actually, we could do all this through AI. We wouldn't need listers in the future because we can convert through an AI bot. Let's just get the consumer talking to our AI bot. Do you think that actual conversation might be happening in corporate estate agency world, naively?
I think they'll be looking at what things can they automate and save time to allow the salespeople to actually sell. I think that's going to be the big focus. It's funny. I read something recently. Actually, I can't remember the publication, and it was they're now creating AI board of directors, so you can have an FD AI. So if I wanted financial advice,
like an avatar,
like an avatar, and they literally have an operations director who's an AI bot. So I mean, the bank of knowledge is that AI bot.
I mean, it's like all those idiots that used to think that online estate agency would be a thing.
There we go.
Correct, right?
I imagine, to answer your question, Russell, I imagine there is an awful lot of that going on. And as well, my experience is that agents always think they can do it themselves.
Yes.
So we'll develop it. Rather than actually go, we're going to go and buy this off the shelf from someone who's spending all their time
they're specialists,
Correct. So, my business partner Josh will talk continually about agents thinking they're the best recruiter, the best marketeer, the best salesperson, the best at every job that's available to them.
Well, you got to stay in your lane.
Let's stay in your lane. Let's get the specialist into who focuses on this solely. The other big problem as well remains around attrition. Because one of the key reasons that you don't get the best fee, you don't convert the instructions, is because Lisa Butcher's not being looked after, so she's gone to XYZ
but you love that.
and moved across.
You want to move.
Yeah, of course we would. But I'm talking impartially around that period, but it's a huge thing. Mortgage brokers probably retain more clients because they get to help people maybe 5 times in a 10-year period. Agents, people move once every 10 years?
Yeah.
So you're not getting that repeat business continually, which I think helps no end, doesn't it?
Yeah, but landlords, they're saying 23% going to be exiting the market now, I think, on the back of renters' rights. So if I do both estate and letting agency, part of that is let's help the landlord. We don't want to lose landlords as having a lettings book, as we know, but if they're going to sell, let's make sure they sell through us as an agent. And then how can we find maybe another buy-to-let investor and retain that property? And I think so there's going to be other angles and just because they won't move for 10 or 11 years, they still might need to renew their mortgage.
Yeah.
They might need to they're going to invest. So there's a buy-to-let opportunity. So I think there's other areas we can touch them and add value, but a lot of agents don't think like that.
Have you got any view on the rise of the self-employed agent? So there's about 2,000 self-employed. We talked to Felix Bravo about this in the previous episode. 2,000 agents, which has kind of grown quite considerably, but is only 2,000 out of, let's say, 50,000 agents. So it definitely hasn't got to a tipping point yet. Well, how do you see the direction of travel?
I think that is 100% the way it's going to go. I think in the next 5 years, I think it'll be 80% self-employed. That's what I believe.
Really?
Yeah, honestly, in 5 years, I reckon.
Do you think 80% of UK agents are good enough? Or you think they could be?
They could be if they
were
were coached and trained. They could be when they come to Titans.
But none of them are reaching out to you saying,
no, they
invest
are.
in me.
They are. So we do some work with some of the EXP. Yopa's a big client of mine. But I think the fear of, if you're an agent, right, you're a valuer, the money you could earn self-employed is astronomical. It's 10x.
Yeah.
But I think the blocker for a lot of them is that security of it's going to take me 6 months to earn from completion, and I don't have a salary. It's on me. And that's unaffordable for a lot of people. They're not in that luxurious position. I know there's some self-employed now that actually give you a small basic and whatever it might be that I've coached.
Or advanced commission, I think.
Correct.
They do that.
Yeah, that's right. A client of mine, Kenny Bruce, is doing that. So I think, but I do think it's where the world's going, right? Because you've got self-employed represents your brand. Ultimately, you've got to get the right people on board who buy into your vision, your values as a culture. But, you know, in terms of the money they could be making is going to be much more of a driver to estate agents. And it works all over the world. I mean, I've trained about 35 real estate agents all over Europe. Every single one is a self-employed model. And it works. I think it's bizarre that UK is quite far behind, actually. And that's why I know EXP and the other one that
IAD.
Yeah, and I think they've got like 20,000 in France, I believe.
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane numbers. So the opportunity is massive, and I think that is definitely where the industry is going.
Yeah.
And you're doing still quite a bit of international speaking and traveling. Is there a country that in your fit, flee, you know, that you think, right, if a gig comes up in the States, I'm definitely doing it.
So I'm doing Vegas in October. It's a 4-day conference called Outbound, and I'm going with my son, which would be lovely. So I'm trying to get him to do like a 10-minute part of the gig, so that we're currently in agreement, conversations about that. But yeah, Vegas was always my bucket list, so I'm really happy about that.
Have you never been?
I've been 3 times, but not for work.
It's a horrendous place.
Yeah.
So you're going to speak.
Do you love it? I think it's
love
horrible.
Vegas.
Absolutely horrible
Love
place.
Vegas.
Do you? Why?
Yeah, I love it. I love the energy, the buzz, the
It's also
excitement.
fake.
Yes.
Yeah, it is, but
It's dirty as well.
Yeah, it is a bit, but
Grubby.
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
we went last year because we went to Vegas, Hawaii, and flew back to see Adele in concert, and that was, you know, what
Wow.
experience was that? She was phenomenal. That was like my daughter's dream, right? But I think my biggest goal with speaking is IBM, because my dad worked for IBM for 25 years. I only met his colleagues at the funeral, and they were lovely, lovely people, and they wrote a whole condolence sort of pack to us. It was beautiful. And my goal is to do a sales kickoff to IBM somewhere lavish, like maybe,
Hawaii,
wherever it might be. That's sort of my goal, really. But yeah, I've been
Do you think us fellas, going back to the psychology bit just before we finish, do you think us fellas are always looking for some kind of validation from our dads?
That's a really nice question. Look, I think recognition is important to a lot of people. And I think, it's different. I think I needed that. I craved that from both my mum and my dad. I now want it from my wife. And, you know, I think what I've taken from the experience is my dad was a grafter. And my dad always said to me, what you put in is what you get out. And my lesson there is I want to show my kids that. They need to see. And part of my issue is balance, personal life and work-life balance, right? We all struggle with that. Yeah. I'm away 3 days a week, all over the place.
But you're trying to display a work ethic example to your kids.
Correct.
As do I.
Exactly
It's a
that.
really
As do
important
we
thing
all.
for me.
Yeah, correct. But I also look at my dad's experience or my experience with my dad of I had 26 years of a great dad. There's a lot of people that don't have that, and how lucky I am I had that, you know? So that's how I see it, really. But it's a really interesting question. I think it depends. I think it depends on how you grew up, what
depends
that
on your
relationship.
relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I know, you know, if I look at Sally Lawson, my business partner, she and Ali Durran, who's also one of our partners, they had a really tough upbringing, like really tough. And I think that was the fire in their belly that came from that.
Well, that's to prove a point. There's a difference between validation, I suppose, and proving a point.
Yes.
And before you go, do you want to do this? Do you want to sell me this pen?
Have you been seeing my TikTok?
No. But I whenever there's a sales conversation,
sell me that pen.
The first thing that always comes to mind is the old adage, which is this: sell me the pen. What would you do in that situation if someone says, "Sell me this pen"?
So I say, well, let's put the pen to one side. Tell me about you. What do you do for work?
I just want to know if you're going to buy my pen.
Well, as in, do I buy the pen, or
No,
you're
no,
going to...
the best one I ever saw was a guy that just said, "Look, do you need a pen?" Well, yeah, I guess. Well, okay, you've answered your question.
Yeah,
That's
then.
it. No,
Yeah,
do you not need
job
a pen? No, I'm not going to buy it there.
I've got a TikTok. I launched TikTok about 8 months ago, and we went with that because my book
you?
school.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, check it out. So it was the first. I mean, that's the main part. I'm getting sponsorship now from a pen company, or trying to. And one went viral within, it got 12.4 million views within 6 weeks, which was like unheard of.
Yeah.
But I think it was because everyone can relate to it. And it is the old adage, right? Sell me the pen, ain't you? Wolf of Wall Street, right? He did it. Jordan Belfort didn't his thing. So that's where it came from, really.
Yeah,
But it's
the ultimate salesman, eh? Jordan Belfort.
Yeah. Well, and fraudster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, there was some naughty things going on.
There was.
But look at him now.
There were lives
He's back doing it again.
The speaking stage, I mean, he's probably made more money out of that than he ever did fleecing people in the city.
I saw him speak about 10 years ago. I saw him speak in Wembley.
And is he impressive?
Not as a speaker, no. His story's amazing. He's very charismatic. He's funny, but as a speaker,
so he's
really.
not now speaking so much as to say, this is how you sell stuff. This is how you sell
talking about
pens.
his journey.
It's about his story.
Well, he's created a methodology called straight line selling, which is it's been around forever in terms of that, not the terminology, but ultimately talks about looping. You're taking someone down the sales process and you loop back something they said earlier to highlight the drivers that you took.
Yeah, sure.
It's clever. It's been
I remember
around.
that as APAC, knowledge probe, answer confirmed.
Absolutely, exactly that. But
and one other thing I'm fascinated about, which is, this might be the controversial bit, sorry, Shiraz. There is a proliferation now of people in the property sector that seek to be experts on making money from property.
Yeah.
So I'll mention one name in particular as an example that's very well known, Gary Neville, for instance. And they purport to have made lots and lots of money from property development, restorations, whatever, and thereby want to impart their knowledge to help you do that. Whereas actually what they're doing is earning money from telling you how to do that. Do you think that's just one massive grift?
No, I think it's something you said, going back to if I want to start doing AI, go to an AI specialist.
Yeah.
So if I want to learn about property investment or want to become a developer, I'd rather learn from someone who's done it. You know, Rob Moore is very big at that. Andy Harrington, I know, does a lot of talks around, not property per se. Grant Cardone, that's his whole methodology, right? He's a self-made multi billionaire now, I think. So there's so many courses out there, but I think if someone's done it, I'd rather learn from them.
Walk in their shoes.
Yeah, correct. You know, success leaves footprints. I want to see what were their mistakes that I could avoid. But ultimately, I'm investing myself if I want to become a portfolio landlord. So I see it differently.
But how do you avoid those that perhaps are there just to earn money out of that particular seminar or session?
Well, I think you need
without much substance.
Yeah, I think you need to do your research. You need to get references, like with any good business, right? With agents, there's such a big thing about reviews. That's there for a reason, to endorse them. So if I have any coach, I'll speak to their clients, even without them knowing. They'll be on their website, testimonials. I'll reach out to them personally and say, look, before I invest in myself with them, give me your feedback.
I find so many people are just looking for shortcuts and rich quick schemes, aren't they?
Yeah,
They're really trying.
I guess
you've got to play the long game.
My suspicion, though, is that there's one, again, who shall remain nameless, but spends most of his time talking about, I've just got a private jet to Monaco.
Yeah.
I've just hired a yacht. I just spent $8,000 on dinner. And you think, okay, I see what you're doing here. You're trying to reflect that you are super successful and you're spending all this money. And therefore, come along to one of my seminars. You too can be like me.
Yeah.
They just smells of grift.
Yeah. I remember you challenging Tyrone Ash in the podcast episode early.
One of the first ones we did.
And Tyrone saying, "Look, fake it till you make it, but you can't fake this for as long as I'll be doing it. You know, so it becomes real."
I coached him. He was working for Sean Newman at Fine and Country, and then I did a talk. He did sort of a quarterly event. I came and spoke at the event. I mean, he's a good example of. There's smoke and mirrors, and people.
He confessed. He said, "No, there's been smoke and mirrors, but you can't do that for as long as I've been doing it. This is real. This is."
He's a brilliant example of being ballsy.
Yeah,
and also
definitely.
The ultimate example of personal brand.
Yes,
which we should all be massive fans of.
Yeah,
and I think we all do that in our different ways in terms of how we articulate that.
Yeah, but
showcasing yourself as whatever successful, controversial, funny, whatever it might be. I think there needs to be a lot more of it. I think in our industry, there's a lot of people that are scared to promote themselves, scared to do the kind of rough, raw LinkedIn videos and so on. I think there needs to be more of it.
Yeah. Well, I think agents full stop are scared of going on camera. And that's like,
definitely.
Scared of humiliation, the same as, fun enough, scared of being a failure.
Yeah.
But if you don't risk failure, you're never going to be a success.
So comfort zone is danger zone, right?
There we go. comfort zone is danger zone. What a great place to stop. Tony, that's been absolutely incredible.
No,
thank you for
guys.
sharing.
Great
thank
conversation.
you for revealing some of the inner secrets of Tony Morris. So really,
my
really.
pleasure.
And how can people contact you?
Go on my LinkedIn. It's probably the best place, or go on my two websites, agency-titans.com or TonyMorrisInternational.com.
And 25% of all income resulting from this podcast to Russell Jervis and Russell
I'd
Quirk.
have given you 45, so
Yeah,
25
there you go.
25 is a bargain.
Well, if you've enjoyed this episode, please do like, comment, and subscribe to the podcast, and that will help us just to bring more great guests onto the show. Like our next guest coming up, who, can you believe, had her hand broken while someone was shaking her hand to show his dominance, and we're going to unpick that a little bit later on.
All about personal brand.
Yeah. So look out for that one, episode 59, coming very soon. But it just leaves me to say thank you, Tony. It's good night from me.
And it's good night from him.